I guess just trying to start a project that was purely for me, that would allow me to make something that wasn't for anyone else, was quite exciting.
The goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to create something that will.
You're listening to Perspective, a podcast for wedding creatives, where we sit down often with a special guest and talk about our many years of experience in the wedding industry. We're talking to Brighton-based photographer Lexi Laine on today's episode of Perspective about pursuing your passion to keep you creatively inspired. Lexi's passion is in underwater photography, and it's in her underwater projects that takes her to the clear waters of the Mediterranean Sea regularly, allowing her to fulfill her other love of travel. But we're not only going to be diving into Lexi's work, which is often described as magical and ethereal, but we'll be chatting to her about gear, freediving, and how she uses certain skills to push her work. I'm also going to be telling the tale of how my wife almost killed me on our honeymoon. That's fun. This episode is, of course, sponsored by With Jack, but I'm going to get onto that a little bit later in the show. In the meantime, Greg, what are we drinking? What are we drinking? This episode is going to be pun-ridden.
We are drinking Serra do Cabral. It's a Brazilian bean, and it was roasted by Fadil, a roastery in Glasgow.
Easy
and
for you
Fadil
to say.
means lucky find in Gaelic.
Oh, very good.
It was given to us by Susie. She brought it into the office, so thank you very much, Susie.
Yes, and while I drink this coffee, we are here with Lexi. How you doing, Lexi?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, thanks for asking me here today.
Mm-hmm. And obviously I've asked you this off mic before, but what are you drinking?
So I have got myself a nice cup of Earl Grey tea with soya milk, my favourite.
Ah, yes. Any
Nice,
kind of
nice.
brand of soya milk you like there, or just...
Normally just like bog standard supermarket own brand, without sweetenings. Cheapest.
Very good, very good. Cheapy cheaps. And no sugar, no anything like that?
I'm a bit of a sugar fiend, so I'm trying to wean myself off that at the moment. But yeah, I've got half a teaspoon of sugar in there.
Half a teaspoon. You're almost there.
That's pretty good going.
That is good going. That is good going. So yeah, we actually met at Photography Farm in Glasgow.
Oh yeah.
That was the first time that we met,
Yes,
wasn't it? Yes,
it
it
was
was the first time. I kind of need to apologise because I actually missed the beginning part of your talk.
Ah, no, that's fine.
The beginning part.
I don't blame you.
I can't remember what I was doing. I don't know why I didn't come in at the start, which was weird. But yeah, fortunately I missed the start. However, the rest of the talk was ace. Super interesting. And obviously that's what we're going to be talking about on today's episode. But yeah, before we do that, let's just get some general chat. How was your weekend?
My weekend. It feels like quite a long time ago now. It's only Wednesday, isn't it?
That's true.
I had a lovely weekend, yeah. So it was a bank holiday, and normally I shoot weddings over bank holiday weekends, as most wedding photographers do. But it was actually my wedding anniversary, so I took the weekend off, and we had a very nice day on Saturday. So it was the May the 4th, the Star Wars themed date. So I've been married for 6 years now, and we often sort of travel around, do a little weekend break for our wedding anniversary. But this year we stayed in Brighton, which was really nice. And we rented a beach box sauna on the beach in Brighton, where you can just kind of like get really hot and sweaty and then dunk into the sea and then back into the sauna. So yeah, it's really nice. Really nice. And we also have a really lovely tradition of putting our wedding outfits back on every year.
Wow, very
doing
cool.
a little self-portrait, so we did that as well.
6 years in, you can still fit into them. That's good.
Yeah, it's this year was kind of an okay fit. I think it was two years in where I couldn't do it up at all. It was the fat year. I think it was kind of like that, comfortably married and gaining a lot of weight. So now it's a marker. I've got to always fit into that dress.
So did you do the self-portrait in the sauna?
No, I didn't actually. It might have been nice. Well, no, I don't think it would have been nice. It would have been sweaty.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, congratulations. That's cool. 6 years. That's a big deal.
Yeah,
I mean, it's obviously not one of the special years, but 6 is still a big
all
number.
special.
They're all special. Yeah, I was looking up to see what the every year it's a different theme, sort of a gift that you have to get. And last year was quite nice. So 5 years it was wood. So I bought some nice garden furniture for us, which I thought was quite nice. But this year was iron, and I was like, oh God. So yeah, I didn't buy anything. I was a shit wife.
It's my 10-year anniversary this year, and I don't even know what 10 years is. Do you know what 10 years is?
That is a big one.
That is a big one.
It is. I kind of feel like it's going to be something special. Like, I don't know. Silver is 25 years, isn't it? So
yeah.
Who knows?
Oh wait, hang on a minute. It's not my 10-year anniversary. It's my 9-year anniversary this year. Oh no, is it?
Good work.
When I got married in 2010. Oh no, I've made a complete botchery. Oh no. Well, everyone knows that maths is not my skill. Well, 9's not a special one, so that takes the pressure off. What's 9? Oh, if we don't know 10, we're not going to know 9, are we?
No.
It's fine. It's fine.
So the weekend there, we didn't have a wedding either. I was evening guest at a wedding.
Oh,
actually.
Nice.
On May the 4th, actually, as well.
Did they have a
So that was
Star
good
Wars
fun.
theme?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't. No,
No.
they just sort of.
The force wasn't with them.
No. But yeah, we didn't have a wedding, but we had an elopement the week before, sort of midweek. So
Oh, nice.
I always feel that sometimes throws off your week, and weekends
Yeah.
don't feel like weekends. So not having a wedding was good. We were up in Glencoe with a
Beautiful.
Swedish groom and Canadian bride.
Mm.
Yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah, so they were getting eloped with how many? 6, 7, 8 of their friends?
5.
5 of their friends. Wow. See, I'm really not bad.
There was 7 in total.
Can't count either.
They had a good vibe, so it felt like a big party.
And by the end of it, we were like friends as well. So
Oh.
Yeah.
it was like 9 friends.
Yeah, you see, I included us in that group. But it was really nice because they were really welcoming. Funnily enough, there wasn't actually a photographer, so having to take charge essentially, which often we leave to the photographer. Sorry guys, to location scout and do all that kind of stuff. We normally just let you guys take that kind of job to alleviate some of the stress. But yeah, Glencoe, obviously we've shot there before, but it was crazy. It was like a 7-minute ceremony.
Yeah.
Wow.
The shortest ceremony, and I can't remember who the registrar was, but he just started.
Yeah, like most of the time with celebrants or humanists, they'll sort of look to the photographer or the filmmaker and look for a nod for, we're all ready,
Are you ready?
let's go.
Yeah.
But this guy didn't look at all. He just was like, I'm ready, I'm just going to start. And we were going,
Our cameras weren't recording. All the group of friends were like huddled around in the corner. They didn't know where to stand. And we were just like, as soon as he started, it's like we were obviously going to let the guests know where's best for them to stand, for us and for them as well, because we want to make sure they're getting some nice memories. But it was just so quick, and I was on a quarter of a battery. So I'm lucky the ceremony was 7 minutes long, because I wouldn't survive too much longer, to be honest.
In a situation like that, when it's not as formal, obviously, with a smaller group of people, would you ever feel comfortable enough to say, actually, can you start again? Can you allow us to get ready?
I think if it was really sort of like we need to say it, then yes.
Yeah.
This situation, it was like I had a panic, but then I was like, all right, we've got one camera rolling now. Now we've got some freedom to set up the other camera.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it was like, right, I think we're okay. We can roll with this.
Yeah.
But the whole ceremony, I was like, this is not going to be good. This is not going to be good. Luckily, when I got it into the edit, I was like, okay, there's enough angles of everything, and it was only 7 minutes, so we're fine. But yeah, if it was really serious, I think we would be like, hold on, guys, just give us a second, because it is more informal, and you can do that.
Sure.
But never at a wedding. The smaller the group of people, the more easier it would be to kind of like say, hey, this isn't the ideal setup. Can we just, and obviously we'd catch that right at the beginning. Like it wouldn't be like 5 minutes
Halfway
and be like,
through.
you know what, guys, my angle isn't quite right. So can we just like shuffle you over like a foot and do it again? we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do that.
It was really good fun.
Yeah.
Like we ended up staying super late.
Like
normally
ridiculous.
elopements, you think, oh, it's a nice short day, but they'd mentioned that they were going to light a bonfire at night at their sort of cabin. So we were like, oh, that'd be quite nice to film.
Yeah.
And obviously, this time of year, it's not getting dark until 9:30, 10.
Oh no!
So they went to a local pub. They went to a local pub for dinner, and we were like, "We'll come along with you." Had a nice dinner with the 7 of them. Back to the cabin, lit the bonfire, and they did in the pub. They did this cool Swedish toast, where they all sort of do this chant, and it was so cool. We got them round the campfire to do the same thing again as like a sort of final toast for the wedding.
It was cool.
Yeah.
Of course, you missed out my favourite bit, Greg, which is actually straight after dinner. It was a beautiful sunset through the forest trees, and before the ceremony, the couple had said that they had written letters to each other. Obviously, this was not part of the ceremony. We did the shoot, had dinner, and then went, and the light was so gorgeous, and they had this really intimate moment in the woods, just like they read each other's letters to each other, and it was just really beautiful. I'm not gonna lie, I cried. Cried because it was so well written and so well done. I thought, wow. Obviously, not knowing that the ceremony footage was all right once you checked it, you're thinking, oh my God, how am I going to get this good content? That letter reading is so beautiful.
Wow.
I could make a beautiful film just without the ceremony, which is fun. But yeah, I really love those kind of raw, unexpected moments, like elopements or weddings.
Yeah.
And for them to be able to share that moment as well is really makes you feel kind of. I'm always honored to be part of someone's wedding, but with such an intimate moment like that, for someone to let you in, it's special.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The most surprising moment, though. I mean, we'll stop talking about this soon because this is taking a long time. But we were obviously shooting along the Glen Etive Road, and I got a message at dinner on Facebook Messenger, and it's like, oh, it's not loading up because I don't have signal. So halfway down the road, got signal, loaded up a photo from our friend Emma Lawson, who's a photographer from Aberdeen, and it was a photo of us in Glencoe shooting.
Ooh.
She had obviously been doing a shoot as well, drove past the road and went, I know those guys. Stopped and got her camera out. It was so funny, like,
small world.
obviously it's just full of photographers.
That's good. I thought you were going to mention the fact that I fell.
No, there's that as well.
Fell right down a hill, got covered in mud. It was wonderful.
Oh no.
Yeah, but anyway, obviously your work kind of speaks for itself, but you are a Sony pony, right?
A Sony pony. Wow, I love that description. I'm going to put that as my new Instagram handle. Sony pony.
But yeah, I wanted to ask you how your Sony stage show went in Birmingham for the NEC.
Yes.
At the NEC, sorry.
At the NEC, yeah.
How'd that go?
Yeah, that was good. It was it's quite intimidating, sort of walking into such a vast, massive photography show and knowing that you got to talk. But the Sony stage is quite a nice area. It had had seating, and there was space for maybe 50 people total, including standing. So it didn't feel too scary. And yeah, it was really nice. I had some really interesting questions from people afterwards. And yeah, it was a really nice crowd. So yeah, I was quite surprised how many people came. And the fact that I didn't know many of the people in the crowd, I was just thinking that, my friends might rock up and that might be it. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, are you a naturally good public speaker, or do these kind of things make you a little bit nervous? Because you seem great at the photography farm.
Thank you. That's very kind. I'm definitely not a natural.
Okay.
I think that, the photography show was the first bit of public speaking I'd done in about 15 years, I guess. So it was a bit of a baptism of fire because it was such a busy environment and, felt quite important being asked to speak for Sony and things like that. So, but yeah, the second time I spoke was when I saw you. Actually, no, that was the third time I spoke was when I saw you in Glasgow. And by then I was a bit more chilled out, I think. I think Photography Farm is such a wonderful community of people. And it's, straight away less intimidating because I know that people that come to these events are generally very nice people that
Yeah.
just really keen to learn and always very supportive of one another. So I wasn't as scared. So.
Yeah, and obviously you've got the day before. I'm assuming it was the second day down in London as well. You've got the day before to get to know people.
Exactly.
So it's when you look out at the people watching you talk, you're sort of friendly with them.
Yes, hopefully. You've all been out drinking together the night before. You're all equally hungover.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your wedding photography quickly. Obviously not the focus on today's episode, but I definitely want to just delve in a wee bit.
I thought you might.
First, though, I have to ask, big Superman fan there?
Yeah. Well, so I was Alexa Kent the majority of my life until I met my partner, and I couldn't resist doing the double barrel for having Clark's name as a
that's a must.
Clark Kent is, and I do actually. I think I have quite a quantity of clients that book me saying, we were trying to choose between a few photographers, and we obviously really love your photos, but what really sealed the deal was your name. I was just like, really?
That's amazing. So hang on. So you got married on May the 4th. You're obviously a big Superman fan. Have you got an inner geek in you? Is this?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not so much of a superhero fan or comic fan, but geeky in other ways, I'd say.
Cool. How long have you been shooting in general? Like tell us your origin story.
My origin.
Oh my god, this really is getting superhero-y. Sorry. I'll stop that.
I was born on the planet Krypton.
I knew it.
So I started taking photos about 18 years ago, I suppose, and that was sort of during my degree. I did a degree in fine art and specialised in photography for the whole of the degree. So when I graduated, I got a job working in a gallery, and kind of thought that might be my route, a way to stay creative, is to be part of the creative world. And I quickly realised that actually watching and helping other artists make work and install work in a gallery space was a bit frustrating, really, and I wasn't being creative myself. So I looked into how I could somehow make money out of taking photos. And I kind of fell into wedding photography, I suppose. It became something that did allow me to be creative and did tick all of those boxes for me. Yeah, that was 13 years ago. I've been full-time wedding photographer for 8 years now, maybe.
Oh, very cool.
Like a long time.
I know. I don't like to say the years that we've been operating either, because it just, in my head, I'm still like 25 years old or something.
Me too, totally.
You said you sort of fell into weddings. How did that start come about back then?
So I assisted another wedding photographer for a while and didn't really see it as something that I would be interested in doing until maybe a year into doing that. I realised that actually you could do things quite differently from the guy that I had been assisting. It was quite old school. And a couple of my friends got married and they weren't going to have a wedding photographer. So yeah, I think maybe the second wedding I ever shot, I was a guest at a wedding, and I think I found out an hour before the ceremony that I would be taking the photos on the day. So it was a good kind
pressure,
of like,
oh my God.
I didn't have my camera gear with me or anything. I was literally just handed a camera that I'd never used before in my life, a brand of camera that I'd never used in my life as well. I can't even remember what brand it was now, but I was just like, okay.
Wow. That's in at the deep end.
Yeah.
But the pressure was off, because they hadn't seen it as something to put pressure on me enough to ask me a long time beforehand. So it was fine. It was playful and it was good. And
how did you feel at the time, though? Were you like, I'm meant to be here enjoying myself as a guest, and now I'm to take photos?
No, I was super, super keen newbie at the time. Yeah. So it was a very exciting thing to be asked to do. Yeah. I think if somebody did that to me now, like, nope.
So I'd be like, Yeah. Oh, so 13 years is a long time. Have you seen many changes throughout your long journey as a photographer?
Long journey. Yeah, I mean, it's changed. It's completely unrecognizable from when I first started. It was, I lived in an area where I was like one of the only women taking photos as a wedding photographer, and I was probably about half the age of the majority of my competition. So I was received by, the wedding photography community with kind of a little bit of, I don't know, disdain, a little bit of fear that I was going to try and, steal all their weddings, and this new kid on the block is threatening, I guess, if you're stuck in your ways, in the ways that a lot of these guys were back then. And yeah, things have changed massively. I would advertise through magazines and things like that then, and social media wasn't a thing. Massive amount of change. And I think for me, the best change in the wedding industry is the communities around, the support. We mentioned Photography Farm before. Just having friends and everyone being around to sort of help each other is really important, I think.
Yeah. So do you have a community, like a local community established, or is it more?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. We have a little Brighton photographers group, which is nice.
Very cool.
We don't meet up very often. It always makes me quite jealous when I visit you guys in Glasgow, because the Scottish community of wedding photographers just seems to be brilliant. Everyone's up for a night out whenever possible. So really good. Yeah. But I guess
that's
a lot
just Scottish people in general.
I think I need to move to Scotland.
You're more than welcome to.
But you're right. There's a good community up here. I feel like we don't meet up as much as we should, or as we have done in the past few years. But this is good.
It's right. Yeah. It's it's so hard. It really is so hard. Like, especially having a family, it's really hard just to have, one, to be social, but two, to be social at a normal hour that everyone else is social.
Yeah.
Like, I can be social super early in the morning, but no one's up. So I'm just me being me. Big weirdo. So for those who maybe haven't checked out your wedding portfolio, what kind of vibe does it portray? Like,
haven't spoken about my wedding photography other than to clients for quite a long time. So it's very relaxed. It's very natural. I think I'm a very kind of like, I look for emotions in people, but I'm not sort of going for the really romantic poses or anything like that. For me, it's about making people laugh or capturing laughter that's happening anyway. I think that's what really gets me with weddings, is just expressive faces.
Cool. Actually, do you know that this is a bit off topic? We just had a conversation on the way up to Glencoe about a recent couple that they were in. They weren't in for us, they were for another photographer. But they were mentioning how they don't like the kind of posed shots, And then out the corner of the eye, they spotted... Greg's giving me a look because I'm about to throw Susie under the bus. She spotted one of Susie's images, and it's obviously this couple, backlit in like a lovely green field, just like being really close. They had this image in their head of what posed and unposed would look like. And they saw that image and they said, "Oh no, we don't like that. That's posed." But I find that so funny because, like, well, as Susie puts it, everyone poses.
Yeah.
Just for one, I just love to wind Susie up. So Susie,
sure
if you're listening,
really
I'm very sorry I've told the whole world. But yeah, no, it's funny how couples can like how they visualize themselves in photographs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These guys were up for much more of the fun, happy, like what you've sort of described, rather than the lovey-dovey. They're like, when do you ever stand and put your foreheads together in real life?
Yeah.
So that's the sort of thing that they were talking about they didn't like.
Anyway, that was off topic, so I'll get back. I'll get back on. Well, hopefully you're not drowning in wedding backlog at the moment. I mean, it's underway, but hopefully you're still able to kind of process through your weddings. But your underwater images are breathtaking. So let's talk more about your underwater stuff.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's more comfortable talking about that, I guess. I'm more practiced on talking about that than my wedding photography, which is crazy, really, seeing as I've been a wedding photographer for 13 years.
Well, your underwater stuff has kind of taken off as of late. So let's chat about pursuing and combining your passions. So obviously you've got a passion for photography, and I'm assuming you had a passion for swimming, right?
Yes. No, I learned how to swim to do this. No. No, I have always
that
loved
would be
swimming.
very interesting.
That would be a really good story, wouldn't it? Damn it.
So was this like a childhood hobby, or
yeah,
was that
I think
the case?
I was encouraged into the sea from probably before I was born. When I was in my mum's tummy, it was kind of like in the sea, and because it was something I was raised with, it never seemed like a daunting place. That I think, speaking to some people, they find the idea of being underwater quite just quite scary, really. I grew up, I was very lucky to go on nice kind of like holidays where I could just be with a snorkel and mask on, and my parents just wouldn't see me for hours because I'd just be gone diving down and like looking for shells and things like that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of swimming myself, so that would be me on holidays. Although, funny enough, actually, I'm having this memory which I find hilarious. I'm obviously a big swimmer. I would do scuba diving. I would happily do anything like that. Although having a shark come towards me kind of freaks me out. But my wife, on the other hand, does not like the sea. She doesn't like fish. She doesn't like the unknown. So when we were on our honeymoon, I dove in. I dove into the water with snorkels and stuff, and I thought, Lindsay, you'll love this. There's not that many fish. It's a small boat. It's fine. Not that many people come over. Anyway, she jumped onto me and pushed me under as she scrambled to get back on the boat. And then she just lost the ability to swim. She grabbed onto another person who was in the water and did the same to them, almost drowned them, just to scramble back on the boat. Oh my God, it's absolutely hilarious. But so you're right. Some people actually do find the water really scary.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lindsay. I'm throwing everyone under the bus today.
Under the boat.
I'm throwing everyone under the boat. That's right.
So
man.
Has swimming always been about open water and snorkeling and diving for you?
I much prefer that. Definitely. When I was a teenager, I used to be like part of a swim club. So like competing for my local town, and breaststroke was my stroke of choice. So I did a lot of kind of like swimming pool training back in those days. So I guess I had, I was given a good sort of like basis for having good stroke technique and things like that, being taught from a young age. But since stopping doing that, the kind of like swimming in pools, I always used to find it quite, I don't know, chlorine-y and not ideal when you can just be in the sea. Mm-hmm. But that said, I'm a bit of a wuss, so the sea is a bit cold for me down here in Brighton. I imagine it could be even worse up there in Scotland. But I do train in a swimming pool twice a week now, just because it's just my way of being able to exercise, and it's the only form of exercise I enjoy. So
yeah. If you don't like the cold, I would definitely not recommend coming out to Scotland, because it is the water up here is Baltic. In fact,
bring my wetsuit.
You should. The bride, funnily enough, from Glencoe, we were by a lake. She dipped her toe in and said, "Oh, it's not actually as cold as I thought. It's kind of warm." And of course, everyone else did it. She was lying. It was ridiculously cold.
It was cold.
Oh my God!
Do you know what temperature of the water is up there at the moment?
You know what? I actually do not know the temperature of the water. All I know is it's avoidable. So I don't measure it.
I think it's about 9 degrees down here in the sea at the moment, and I was in for the first dip of the year on Saturday, and that was feet numbingly cold.
Yes.
Luckily, you had that sauna to go and warm up.
Yeah, exactly.
The question is, are you gentle?
Ease yourself in,
and ease yourself in.
Dive in.
Yeah.
I think you've got to do it pretty quick.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just excruciating otherwise. They say it's like ripping off a plaster, isn't it? You've got to just do it. But I don't normally dive in. I normally will go feet first in, I think. Do it more of a bomb than a dive. I'm not that graceful.
Yeah. So how did you start combining, obviously your love of swimming, with photography then? How did that all come about?
So I think the first time I dabbled in underwater photography was actually when I did my degree. So that was, looking about 15 years ago, but it was just a real dabble. I bought myself a Nikonis camera, which was like a 1970s tank of a camera, and it was designed especially for underwater photography. It was 35mm film, and it was a really lovely thing. And I did some, I remember doing some photo shoots with friends in swimming pools. I was a member of my my local rugby team at the time, and I gathered together loads of the rugby girls, asked them to take their clothes off, and did these really quite comedy photos underwater. So that was my first kind of dabble, and then from there I just kind of used that camera on holiday for a few years. And it wasn't until I think maybe about 7 years ago that I decided to go digital with the underwater stuff, and just started experimenting, really. I saw it as a way of doing something purely for myself outside of any of the paid work that I did. So I do a lot of sort of headshot portrait photography as well as weddings. And some of these shoots can be really creative and other times less so. I guess just trying to start a project that was purely for me, that would allow me to make something that wasn't for anyone else, was quite exciting. And it wasn't really something that I'd seen many people do that much of. So I think being a wedding photographer in this, today's industry, is you're one of how many million photographers around the world. It's incredibly hard to feel like you can stand out in any way when there's so many amazing people out there shooting stuff. So I think for me, starting a personal project where I didn't have that much competition, or it wasn't even competition, there's lots of other people that shoot portraiture underwater. It's not competition because, it's not for money for me. Well, originally it wasn't to make money, it was just to be creative. So
yeah, very cool. Are there other underwater photographers that you kind of are inspired by, or?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, Instagram is a wonderful place for finding people that make beautiful work, and there's definitely some really lovely underwater photographers out there, and they always live in amazing places. I just think, God damn it, if I could live in Hawaii.
Yeah, I mean, is that kind of frustrating, like when you tell people that you're from England but you shoot underwater stuff, are they not like, ooh, it's a bit cold down there? The water's not a bit murky?
Yeah, I mean, I would shoot. I think the temperature of the water, I would be willing to handle. If I could shoot in the sea every day, I would. But it's the murkiness that prevents me from doing this so much here. Although I have got a couple of trips over the next few months that are taking me to, I'm going to Cornwall in a couple of weeks, and then West Wales in June. So cool. I'm going to do lots of swimming around the coastline there, just to scope out locations and see. This is where I've heard you can get some really beautifully clear water in the UK. So
really? Okay. Yeah. I'm intrigued.
And I'm sure the fact that you don't live in Hawaii, it means when you get to go to warmer climates, it's more special. It's more exciting.
Definitely. Yeah, I guess that is a really good way of looking at it. I think a lot of people will choose the sort of the place where they live and then forget how wonderful it is. It becomes like wallpaper. And for me to go to destinations to do my work is it'll always be experimental and new and fun when I visit different locations. So for sure.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that. We often say that in the show, like how many people in Glasgow that just don't even go up north or don't travel to some of the amazing places in Scotland. Crazy, right, Greg?
Yeah.
So you're right. It's even in our own country, we go to somewhere new and it's just a totally different change of scenery. It feels like you're going abroad, and
definitely,
I love that energy that you want to put that energy in to capture something unique. I love that.
Yeah.
So obviously, we've mentioned farm. I feel like we mention photography farm on this podcast bloody all the time. Lisa, I'm coming for you for sponsor money. Yeah, and obviously I mentioned that I missed the beginning of your talk. What I realised after the talk was it was actually the film that I had missed. Now, obviously, you had a collaboration with Wex and Sony, which is recently published. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, I think it was published on Friday.
It was lovely to watch. If for those out there who don't know, it's a behind the scenes glimpse of an incredible project shot in the enchanting cenotes of Mexico, and it's titled it's titled Under the Surface.
I'm glad you remembered that. I was like, God, what's it called again?
Yeah, I almost butchered it. So yeah, you can find that on Lexi's Facebook page, and I would highly recommend that you check it out if you haven't seen it.
Yeah. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well, so you can get there quickly.
It's really cool. And it's awesome to kind of see the behind the scenes stuff. But do you want to talk us through the project?
Yeah, of course, happy to. So it's been pretty amazing, really. I think it was on 2nd of January this year that I was given the call to say that the go-ahead for the project had been given. So I had a month to plan the trip, to shoot it, and basically I was asked to make a behind-the-scenes little sort of documentary about me, about how I work, that was going to be shown on the Wex Photo Video YouTube channel and on their Facebook page. So that's another way that you can view the film. And yeah, it was amazing, really, really incredible. I took my favourite model with me. Her name is Yara. She's a good friend of mine now. We met sort of 5 years ago whilst I was travelling. And we also found an amazing filmmaker called Ollie Putnam. I spent ages trying to find somebody that would be able to do underwater filming, above water filming. And I kind of had this idea that I'd like to have some drone footage sort of flying over the cenotes as well, just because it's so kind of like in an intense amount of jungle that surround these little beautiful pools of water. So I thought it'd be quite cool. And yeah, so I found this guy, Ollie, and we had a real fun time making it, lots of laughter. And so the cenotes are these kind of like, for anyone who hasn't been to that area of Mexico, it's they don't have any rivers that run sort of above ground. They're all underground rivers.
Yeah, right.
And the cenotes are these kind of like little pools that appear when the limestone collapses above one of these rivers. So you get these little pools, and there's like 6,000 of these amazing little cenotes around that region of Mexico. So as you can imagine, I sort of arrived and was like, had a list that I'd sort of researched beforehand. Can see a photo online and think, that has potential, but you don't know until you actually sort of drive from location to the next to find out its limitations and things like that. So it was it was a good learning curve, and also actually having the camera turned around and put on me was a challenge because like many photographers, you're not always a fan of doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Speak it. I think the audio for it was the hardest thing for me. I had to re-record it possibly about 1,000 times, I think. I feel very sorry for the filmmaker who's just like, seriously, can you not just say one sentence without messing it up?
was that the interview? Was that the interview section, or did you dub in some stuff in the studio?
Yeah, we ended up having to dub in most of it.
Yeah, most of it.
It was such a disaster.
That's fine. I mean, interviewing is definitely hard on both the interviewer and the interviewee. It's a total skill set.
Yeah, well, you're very good at interviewing, I have to say.
Stop it. I just chat about myself. Greg's like, oh no, here he goes again. So obviously 600 pools. 600?
6,000.
6,000 pools. Jesus.
I didn't go to all of them.
No. How many did you go to?
Probably only about 30 in total. Maybe less than that.
Only
even
30.
That's a lot.
Well, I think there were quite a few that we could just rule out from the get-go because of various things like how touristy they were. So some the thing with these cenotes is they're all privately owned. Somebody will buy the land and they'll put a barrier around the area, and you'll have this nice, friendly Mexican guy sitting at the gate asking for money for you to go in. So they also have opening hours as well, which was quite frustrating. So like, for me, I would just go like, at sunset and there'd be nobody else around and it would be perfect. But, they were closed at that time. So yeah, it was kind of like crowd avoidance combined with, just trying to get the right look from the depth of the water and the clarity of the water and things like that.
I'm assuming the tourists didn't just interrupt your wrecking of the locations, but they must have gotten in the way of your shooting.
Yeah, there were a couple of moments where Ollie, the film guy, was just like absolutely flabbergasted at this woman who just sort of breaststroked straight into the scene that he was filming.
Wow. Yeah, I'd be raging.
The look on his face was a picture.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, right? So you're taking the shot, and then maybe a member of public doesn't quite know that you're filming and just walks in front of you. I feel like it's kind of the same thing, but I feel like you have to have intention to swim into someone's shot, right? Surely it's just way more obvious. Or maybe it's not. I don't know.
What if you don't see them? They're underwater. You dive in. You're like, oh man, I'm between a photographer and a model now.
Oh man. How blind must you be to get yourself right in the middle of this? Yeah. So how long did taking the film? How long was the project, and how long did the film take?
So we were there for a couple of weeks. I was shooting still photography every day while we were there, but we only filmed the. I think maybe 6 days of filming, so it was actually quite a long time for only a 6-minute film. But I was a little bit of a control freak, I think, and with all the footage, I was like, "Oh yeah, I love that, Ollie. That was great. But can we do it again where my hair looks a little bit?" No, I'm joking. I am totally joking. There were definitely kind of like ideas that I had for kind of like extra bits of footage. So he just went above and beyond and. Yeah, did extra days filming for me, which was really sweet of him, just to kind of get it just right.
Yeah, and nice. Ollie, if you ever do listen to this, you did a great job. I love the film. Can we put a link to his Instagram or something in the show notes, Greg?
Yeah, we'll find out from Lexi and put it in there.
I'm sure he'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
So this sounds like a very big production. Obviously, you've got behind the scenes with you and everything. What's a typical shoot like for you? Do you scout out a location and then come up with an idea, or what's a typical shoot like?
Yeah, so we'll always have a sort of a location in mind the night before. A lot of the time, I shoot on when I'm not in Mexico. I shoot in a very nice location in the Mediterranean on a little island called Formentera.
Oh, right.
And it's a very small island, which is great because usually the night before or the morning of, you'll be able to sort of see what the wind direction is like and go to an area of the island where the sea will be at its calmest.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know that island really well. It does mean that we go to the same locations quite regularly. So that's, I guess why it's nice to be asked to do a project like this one in Mexico where it was just completely different. Yeah, the locations were all foreign and it was a challenge for sure. I think at the time of shooting, I was so kind of like concerned about the challenges that I was facing that I didn't think that I was going to get anything that I'd be really pleased with, sort of from the still imagery point of view. But I was prioritizing making the film anyway. So
right.
I just thought kind of like, if I get some still images out of this, and this will be great. But I'm pleased with what I got out of it. It was good.
And the images are fantastic, by the way.
Yeah.
Absolutely astonishing.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you took your favourite model with you. Do you have, I'm assuming the models have to be pretty skilled at diving as well.
Yeah.
So do you have like a group of people that you try and use?
Yeah. I've worked with a few models before, some better than others when it comes to kind of looking natural underwater. And that's the real key thing, is that being a professional model does not necessarily mean that you'll look good underwater. So it's kind of like seeking out people that are just water babies, really. And Yara, who came to Mexico with us and who I shoot with in Formentera, she is like the most insanely gifted underwater person that I've ever come across. It is crazy how she can just look like she is above water, and her facial expressions, just so utterly relaxed and content with wafting around in the water in nice dresses. It's quite impressive. And when we were in Mexico, I took a massive, great big wedding dress with me in my suitcase. And I got her to put that on one of the shoots. And she coped with it so well, it's kind of constantly sort of on, I don't know, just sort of waiting for her to start struggling, and for you have to, to get people involved in helping her to stay above water. But she didn't need any assistance at all. She was,
very awesome.
Brilliant at
is there like obviously you mentioned the dresses, is there a sort of dress that is better underwater? Or like color wise, or
it's
material?
Really hard to know until you try. Really, I always I buy a lot of dresses on eBay and go to charity shops and things like that. And I think light colors tend to look really nice. But then you kind of get to the point where you just think, if I'm always shooting in a kind of creamy colored floaty dress, then it's going to get really repetitive. So I just kind of try and keep things different by buying new things, trying new colors, and just different styles of dresses and things like that. I'm actually in the midst of making a dress at the moment, which is a whole new skill set for me. I got my sewing machine out.
Very cool.
So that's for my next project. I'm actually going on my next shooting trip in about a month's time. Only about a month's time, yeah.
How does it feel to be making your own dress and then to realise that you're about to destroy it? Does that feel good? Or
it's fine actually, because it's not going to look particularly good. You wouldn't want to wear it above water, put it that way.
Right, okay.
It's actually going to be made out of plastic bags largely, so it's kind of like a little bit of a statement about single-use plastic. That's the kind of idea.
I love that. Is that something you're quite passionate about, like the protecting our oceans and seas and stuff?
Definitely. I mean, it's really it's very easy to feel completely powerless when you see, kind of the state of what our world is like because of what we've done to it as humans. So, I don't really know. Other than trying to reduce on a personal level, it's really hard to know what to do. So, I guess making a little bit of a statement in one of my photos might be interesting. I don't know. We'll see.
Oh, that's gonna be awesome. I'm actually genuinely really looking forward to that. Have you seen any of the these videos on YouTube where obviously they do it like a shoot session with the bride and groom, and the bride dives into the water and almost drowns? Have you seen these?
No, is that intentional?
No.
Is it intentional, or is like the accidental kind of?
Well, they jump in on purpose, but the way that she jumps in normally is like she goes all the way through the material and it kind of covers her over the head. Man, I would feel super nervous.
Definitely, I think that is like, it's so easy to forget how powerful the sea is, and it commands a lot of respect. So I'm super cautious. I don't shoot with new people in the sea until I've kind of tested them out in a swimming pool first. I wouldn't put anybody in a giant wedding dress. I only tried it with Yara because I knew how brilliant she is, and there were three of us there, so if she had got into any difficulty, we could have assisted her. She was only about maybe 3 meters away from the side of the cenote, so we could have easily got her up and to safety. So I think the safety element of doing underwater photography is important, and I think good to mention for sure. I think a lot of photographers are risk takers, aren't they? Putting couples on the edges of cliffs to get that right shot and things like that.
Oh man, there's some an image comes to mind where it's just a couple and it's like an infinity pool, but one of them is hanging off the edge, being held by the other. And I'm thinking, this is a photograph, and you're dangling essentially off a cliff just for Instagram fame. Mental. I mean, I'm sure, I think they said that they felt safe and everything else, but can you really be that safe if you're covered in water or hanging off a stone cliff? And then 2, you're inspiring other people to do this stuff. Anyway, sorry. That's by the by.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And I think I feel like it's kind of in my responsibility to always talk about safety whenever I talk to anyone about my work, because it could just be assumed that you could get anyone in the water and it would be fine. But it takes an extraordinary human, I think, to be able to manage that amount of weight.
Yeah, that's good that you said that because, you don't want people to get the wrong impression. So it's obviously a big deal. In fact, that's actually one thing that stood out to me in your film was the fact that you free dive.
Yes.
Now, for those who don't know what freediving is, can you explain to them what this is?
Yeah, sure. So it is basically the art of breath hold, I guess, is a way to sum it up. It's a sport, but I see it as an art as well. It's a way of kind of conditioning your body to get used to the feeling of CO2 buildup in your lungs so that you can just prolong that amount of time that you can spend holding your breath and therefore enjoy more time underwater.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I'm a member of an amazing freedive club here in the UK called No Tanks. It's a great name for a club, I think. No Tanks.
Yeah.
Spelled with an X.
Awesome.
And it's so it's their sort of philosophy of basically the way to become a better freediver is to really kind of relax into it, for it not to be a competitive thing, but for it to be about enjoyment only, really. So, it's just a really kind of like lovely meditative thing to do, and I train with them twice a week. So it's just a really, really lovely way to reset my clock. Sorry, my computer keeps making these loud noises. Can you hear that on your end?
Is it like a bird?
No.
I can hear a bird, that's it.
You can hear a bird. Oh, yeah, I've got lots of birds in my car.
It's a very pleasant sound. I mean, is it a bird?
Surrounded by bird song. No, I think I keep getting notifications and it's making loud donging noises.
Oh, no, you're fine.
I've not noticed it.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bird song is pretty deafening here. We've got a nice little cottage in the country in the South Downs near Brighton, and it's very sweet here.
Okay, that is genuinely the image that I had pictured in my head. You sitting in this lovely cottage with surrounded by forest. With Jack was designed from the ground up and is tailored specifically for creatives. Whether you provide a service like design, development or photography, or offer advice to clients, With Jack is for you. It's focused on creatives. Insurance shouldn't be complicated, so With Jack has made every step easy. You'll deal with one form and talk to one Jack as you sign up, get covered, and move on with your day. With Jack is all about bespoke insurance for creatives. Simple. That doesn't mean more forms or faff, it means less. It's not about endless features and stale service. It's about one solid policy and the personal touch. Bye-bye unnecessary fuss. Hello, creative friendly insurance. Be a confident creative. Right, so how did you start freediving? Was that just a development of your swimming as a child and you just wanted to do that?
So.
Or was that inspired by your photographs?
It was inspired by doing the photography, really.
Mm-hmm.
I trained as a scuba diver probably maybe 12 years ago.
Okay.
But when I started doing the underwater photography, I didn't want to use all of that gear for doing the shoots, pretty much because I knew that I always wanted to photograph people underwater. So I think to have all of that kind of like scuba equipment was unnecessary, really, because one, I'd be going up and down, above the surface, below the surface, to communicate with the person that I was shooting.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't have oxygen to use underwater, so why should I? Do you know what I mean? I wanted to be in the same conditions as the person that I was shooting. So I started doing my underwater photography with just like breath holds as a technique. And it wasn't until a year ago that I was just doing some research online and discovered that there was a freediving club here in the UK that I could join. I just assumed it was the kind of thing that I would have to learn whilst on holiday, like scuba diving. Yeah. I didn't think that I'd want to do freediving in the UK just because it's too cold in the sea. But so a club that's based in London largely, but also has a Brighton branch. And they do pool training twice a week and then also run nice trips to places all over the UK and all over Europe and as far as Egypt and things like that as well. So it's been a really nice thing to learn to do and get better at. So it's really helped my ability to hold my breath for longer, be a lot more confident with it underwater as well, like that ability to go into sort of a Zen mode where I don't really have to kind of concentrate too much on anything other than what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really lovely. I think also because I've got a really, he was calling me a Sony pony earlier. So I shoot with the Sony A7 III and the A7R III.
Mm-hmm.
And I've kind of got to know these cameras so brilliantly well now that I don't have to really kind of think too much about what settings I'm setting changes that I'm making and things like that. Like a lot of the time I'll do a kind of a light test near the surface to decide on my settings, and then when I'm actually down underwater, I'm just kind of like moving my focal toggling my focus around the scene to actually take the shot. So I'm not having to really kind of like think about my camera gear or worry about my camera gear too much. So yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, that must be good for helping you connect with your model, the fact that you can switch off from thinking about taking the photos and you're in the same circumstance as well, with holding breath as well. So do you feel there's a good connection with the model?
Yeah, for sure. I think Yara and I have built up such a connection where I kind of think sometimes when we're underwater, she can read my mind. It's really quite an odd sort of thing. Like we've just got I think she just understands my vision and what I'm trying to achieve in the photos that we take. So that really helps. Mm-hmm. And I'm also quite bossy, I guess. So when we're on the surface and kind of like, breathing out between dives, then I'll be quite sort of descriptive sometimes about where I want her to go, like sort of pointing to different, like a rock that's beneath us or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then what I want her to do to get there, and then, what I want her facial expression to be or something like that, just, quite descriptive in my directing. But then other times just letting her sort of play and dance in the water is really lovely as well. She moves very brilliantly. Yeah. And so for the film that we were talking about, the Mexico film, I did a little bit of the filming for that. Ollie obviously did the majority of it, but I did a few clips. Some of the clips towards the end where she's just kind of like dancing in the water, and they're shown in slow motion. It's just like, that's kind of given me a little bit of a bug for doing some more film stuff.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I guess that's one of the benefits of being Sony, is that it can do both super well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really exciting, and to have the two cameras, I find the A7R III is brilliant for doing the stills for sure. Like the resolution of that has been really useful in that I can print A1, even A0, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of deterioration in the images, which is really, really nice for me. But yeah, the A7 III I use for doing little film clips, and it's fun to learn. I'm really liking it as a new challenge.
Very cool, very cool. I have a random question to do with freediving though, right? So Greg and I mean, this was maybe a year ago, 2 years ago maybe, we were in Lanzarote for a wedding. We had it was an older Sony that Greg owns. We bought a little
RX100, just the point and shoot.
Yeah, an RX100.
Oh yeah, that's nice, that camera. I've seen a few friends of mine used to use that for doing underwater filming.
Well, this is where I'm getting at. This is where I'm getting to, rather. So Greg and I decide, okay, well, actually me, because I always like shooting underwater. I wanted to do a pool shoot ages ago, but didn't have equipment. We bought a little bag. Obviously, I'm sure you're familiar with the zip-up bag.
One of the Amazon specials.
The Amazon specials, that's right. No, the cheapest.
I think Liam Crawley at Photography Farm, Liam Crawley called them glorified sandwich bags.
Yes. That's right. Yeah, so we took them, and on the day that we weren't shooting, we decided to do a wee scouting location before the couple shoot, and we went for a swim, and my intention would be to shoot Greg underwater. Now I didn't shoot very well. I couldn't really control the settings in the bag. I was paranoid because it was Greg's camera, not Cinemate's camera, so I wasn't sure properly. So the question I'm asking, right, so when I dove under the water and I wanted to go all the way down to the bottom, I would feel a lot of pressure on my head and ears and stuff.
Yeah.
How would you dive under the water and not feel that pressure?
Not feel that pressure. So it's just about equalizing, really. And
Okay.
I think that's another thing we do practice with in my freediving club. It's one of the biggest challenges that people face, I think, is working out how to equalize the air spaces that you have in your head.
Right. Okay.
Definitely, a lot of people struggle with it. It's not easy to do. It's just practice. There's lots of different kind of like techniques that you can use to practice
Okay.
sort of your awareness about your airspaces and how to clear them. And but even when you're really good at equalizing, when you're like 30 meters deep, the pressure of the water on your rib cage is so immense. So your lungs are like a sort of quarter of the size that they regularly are above the surface. So and it's a physical challenge on the human body for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So yeah, my answer is practice.
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 How do you equalize the air in your head?
Some people like pinch their nose and do that sort of a slight sort of blowout.
Cool.
You know, when you're on an aeroplane and you want to
Yes.
try and clear your ears.
Got you.
And then you can learn techniques for doing that same thing, but without having to touch your face, without having to use your hands and your nose. So more of a gentle equalize of a gradual thing that you do constantly as you're working your way down into the depths.
I will. I mean, I don't think I'm going to be in the warm seas of Lanzarote too often. So, but next time I am, I'll try it. Yeah. Okay. So, have you noticed since publishing your underwater content that your wedding clients have changed? Is that
I tend to keep my business is quite separate, actually.
Okay.
Just because I don't know, I have the idea that if wedding clients think that wedding photography isn't my first love, that I'm not going to be as passionate about it.
okay?
And so that's far from the truth, because I really enjoy doing wedding photography as well.
Yeah.
So I have just kind of like chosen to have them as two very separate things, hence coming up with the pseudonym Lexi Laine.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a spin-off from my actual name, Alexa Clark Kent. So yeah, I think what I do with the underwater stuff definitely impacts the way I shoot weddings. It's definitely changed me as a photographer.
Cool.
It kind of helps to keep me inspired, and I think I find the wedding industry can be incredibly noisy online. When you're constantly seeing other brilliant wedding photographers' work and comparing yourself to these people, and I suffer from a sort of a lack of confidence, I guess, with my work generally, but especially when it comes to wedding photography, just because there are so many people all fighting to be the best, and it's an amazing community to be part of, but it's also a little bit daunting at times. So I think for me, taking a step back a few times a year where I can go and make work that's completely different, it does revive me to come back to weddings with a sense of calm and a sense of that I'm not going to try to be as competitive with my work, not like thinking, oh, what will other wedding photographers think about my work. I think that is the concern that most people have. I think if you really think about it, you're not really concerned about what potential clients think about your work. Obviously you do, because you want to book potential clients, but when it comes to that real sort of judgment, I think it's always kind of, when you post things, what will other wedding photographers think about this shot? And it's something that I try to avoid now. I think just try not to worry about it.
I find it amazing how many amazing photographers we've spoken to on the podcast still have this sense of imposter syndrome, and I partly feel like obviously social media is to blame. I feel like I'm being very negative on social media on this episode today. I love social media. It's great. It's such a great tool. But it's that kind of mental state that people can get themselves into. Is like, oh yeah, you've been inspired by so many other photographers. You've seen their work. It's like, oh, I'm just comparing myself. Am I doing it right? Have I been, as we spoke to, I don't know if you know Craig and Eva Saunders photography, but husband and wife team, Craig was saying how has he been faking?
Oh yeah, you did one of your last podcasts with them, is that right?
Yes.
I haven't had a chance to listen to that yet. play will.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. He mentions, has he just fluked these past 300 weddings, or is this the wedding he's going to get found out that he's an imposter, like someone? I just find it's funny the mindsets that we can get ourselves into when looking at other people's work. And
yeah, you mentioned that
Definitely.
the underwater stuff sort of helps with your inspiration and mental state for weddings. Is there any practical things that you think it's influenced? Like, for instance, like directing the couple?
Yeah, that's interesting you should say that. I was thinking about this recently, and I think I'm quite a noisy shooter in that I'm often sort of directing people. I'm quite verbal when I'm shooting couples.
okay.
Yeah, I think it does vary from couple to couple whether they need direction. I might hold back a little bit. I think with the underwater photography, obviously, I have to be silent when I'm doing that. I can't communicate whilst I'm underwater. So it really kind of like takes away that control, which for me, being a little bit of a control freak, I think is quite a good thing to just shut me up for a minute. So I think, I've definitely taken elements of shooting in that approach to weddings, like actually consciously going into a period of a couple portrait shoot where I just think I'm just going to not say anything for a minute and see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think embracing the awkward sometimes is quite an interesting thing to do.
Yeah, I guess also knowing your camera inside out comes from having to do that underwater. So when it comes to wedding, you just exactly how far you can push it, sort of thing.
Definitely. I think conditions are pretty extreme underwater when it comes to light. I think dealing with light and the harshness of light underwater is really quite a big challenge. So that kind of can be used quite nicely in midday sun for an outdoor ceremony in weddings as well. That sort of the ability to cope with harsh conditions and knowing how my camera can handle underexposure so you don't lose highlights and things like that. Yeah, they are really brilliant, those Sonys, for the dynamic range.
Yeah.
I think that the difference between knowing the camera like the back of my hand, if I've been shooting a long project underwater where I've been away for a few weeks and I'm literally just kind of like doing 2 shoots a day, I get so used to what my camera feels like within its housing and where all the buttons are on the housing.
Yeah.
And then suddenly going back to shooting above water when I'm back in the UK and doing like portrait shoots and weddings and things like that, it is quite different. It's like,
where's
so
the
small
button
for that?
Yeah.
And I know my camera can do this, but it's like, it's suddenly smaller and but it's so much more heavy out of the water.
Oh yeah,
it's like it doesn't weigh much at all when you're in the water. It's really nice.
Obviously, you mentioned that you keep your kind of businesses separate. Have you, like, business wise, do you get hired by divers to shoot their weddings? Is that a thing?
I'm hoping it will be.
Sure.
I haven't shot any divers' weddings before, but I think in the future I'm really looking at trying to get the odd kind of like destination wedding where, I mean, that's the ideal, isn't it? If I'm going to be really picky about my ideal client here, I want them to get married on an island in the Mediterranean, preferably. Nice light. And if they could both be divers of some kind as well,
very
then
cool.
That would be ideal.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's a very niche little bit of the market I'll carve out for myself.
Yeah, no, it is super niche. In fact, I was thinking, is it too niche? Is that going to make sense as a question? But yeah, let's go.
Everyone has their dream client, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Right. So what advice would you give to someone then who feels they want to incorporate one of their hobbies or passions into their photography? Is there any advice that you would give them?
Oh,
And obviously it doesn't need to be like maybe their hobby isn't swimming or whatever.
I think that's a really hard thing to think about, really. I remember for years I had people say to me that if you want to do a personal project, pick something that really inspires you, something that you do every day of the week, that you could do some really kind of interesting, gritty stance on. And I think I mentioned this before. I used to play rugby, and I thought, maybe I could do like a sort of behind the scenes of the rugby girls and things like that. And I never did it. I retired from rugby before I did that. But there was always kind of like that I need to find that personal project that is going to be interesting enough for me to want to continue to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And actually finding that starting point is the hardest thing. I think when you find your passion, then it's kind of easy from there, really. You just carry on doing it regardless of what people think.
Yeah.
I guess. I think that's where the true passion comes into play. It doesn't the end result or the reaction from people online and things like that doesn't feel as crucial as perhaps other work does.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
But as far as advice goes, not sure really.
Uh-huh.
I went to a photography farm event. Oh god, probably about 4 years ago. And it was a workshop run by Ryan Muirhead, the photographer.
Oh,
Do you know
yeah.
him at all?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Lovely work that he does, and I was really inspired by his portraiture. His work is so kind of like emotive. So I not only booked on to do his workshop, but I also booked to have a one-to-one kind of like portfolio review with him
right, cool.
afterwards.
Very cool.
And he told me at the time that he had kind of like formed this creative relationship with this woman, and they sort of lived on the opposite sides of America, but they would meet up together and spend days at a time just hanging out and taking pictures. And at the time I had kind of like, I'd made friends with Yara, the model that came to Mexico with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of concerned that a lot of the photos that I was showing in my feed were all of her. And he kind of like reassured me and kind of encouraged me to try and develop that friendship further, really, so that even if I am just taking the pictures of the same woman again and again, but in different locations and different dresses, like he kind of challenged me to make that work and just to be creative with it, I suppose.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the best piece of advice that has been given to me, was to embrace her as a muse and really kind of trying to come up with something special that you wouldn't get when you're just shooting somebody for the first time, because you build up such a rapport with somebody and an understanding of them that it becomes something really different and unique. So
I suppose
that's the best advice that I've ever got.
That's cool.
I don't know whether I can relate that to other people.
I guess in a way she becomes like an accountability partner, because she'll maybe be like, right, we should really go away a trip now, and you'll inspire each other to keep doing this.
Definitely, her excitement about the images is so lovely. It really does kind of it means so much more than if I was just kind of like finding models, paying them, and never seeing them again afterwards, kind of thing. It's it's an odd thing.
So staying on the sort of advice sort of theme, if someone has been inspired listening to this to dip their toe into underwater photography, we've mentioned the sort of the sandwich bag things, but is there any equipment or practical advice that you would give someone just getting started and just seeing how it feels?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the sandwich bag approach is it's certainly a risky one. It's not one that I've tried myself. I remember a friend of mine had one of these things, and I tried a Canon 5D out in it, and it was just like, you couldn't access any of the buttons or anything like that, and I didn't actually go underwater with it. This was just taking photos in the rain using it.
Wow.
I'd find it a challenge to use one of those, but definitely, I mean, it's better than not having anything, and they're a lot cheaper than housings are, for sure. I think if you're just testing the water, but then again, like another way is to hunt around on eBay and keep an eye out for secondhand gear that comes up, and it does come up every now and then. Like when I bought all of my Sony gear, I obviously sold all of the equipment that I was using before, and that was a lot more affordable than when I first bought it. So it's a good way to do it, I think, if you know that you're gonna enjoy taking underwater stuff, but you don't want to invest too much, then secondhand for sure.
Yeah, and for all those who are interested and maybe have the financial backing to just dive straight in there. What housing do you use?
Good puns.
I'm
liking your puns. Dive straight in there. Dip your toe in the water. So I use, I have a housing made by Nauticam, and it is pretty incredible, really. It's made of solid aluminium, I think.
Okay.
Steel. It's metal anyway. It's like a great big hunk of a beast. But so the Sony sits inside it really nicely. All of the buttons line up with all of like the custom function buttons and things like that I've set up on my Sony. So I can make really quick setting changes. And yeah, you just kind of like get to learn where all the buttons are on the housing that coincide with the buttons on your camera. And it's also got this amazing like vacuum valve system on it as well. So once you close the housing up, you use this kind of like I suppose a reverse bicycle pump where you're sucking the air out of the housing. So it creates a vacuum, and it has an alarm system. So when you're diving, when you're underwater, if for any reason the vacuum was breached and some water started going into the housing, then an alarm system would start going off.
That's pretty handy.
Very handy, yeah.
So you can like get yourself above water, get your camera out of the water before the actual camera inside gets damaged. It's nice, sort of reassuring thing. So I never have any kind of like fear when I'm in the water of my equipment. So like, it's trustworthy and reliable, and that's what you need, really.
Yeah, very cool. In terms of housing, are they built for a certain camera, or are they kind of like a universal?
Yeah, they are camera specific.
Okay, cool.
Although I'm really lucky that the model that I bought fits the A7 III and the A7R3, which happen to be the two cameras that I have.
That is very handy, yes.
I mean, that's another great thing about the Sony bodies, is they kind of like brought out a wave of them at the same time that are all pretty much identical in where the button placements were and things like that. So I'm fairly certain I could possibly use an A9 in that housing as well, because that's a very similar shaped camera. So, yeah.
What about one sort of practical tip if someone's on holiday? Sort of is there a certain time of day that's best for trying out underwater stuff?
Yeah, so I like early-ish and late-ish. So sunset or sunrise is really nice. But then it's, I guess maybe an hour or 2 hours after sunrise is quite good, because you want to get some angle to it's kind of like the greater the distance the sun goes through the water, then the harder it can be to work with. But then again, when the sun is like dead above you, then you get the same kind of issues that you get at midday ceremonies and above water stuff like wedding photography. So I think light is quite similar in some ways. Like when the sun is in and it's just a cloudy day, you'll get a lot more soft lighting, and that has a completely different look to the photos as well.
Do you need to move your model around to different locations depending on like do you need to dive deeper, say if it's like overhead sun, or? Yeah,
definitely. That's what I would do. If it's overhead, then I'd go deeper. And the you get those real sort of like harsh sort of rays of light that sort of, I don't know whether you've seen it on your skin when you're in the swimming pool, and you get those kind of like, almost looks like tiger stripes, kind of like bright highlights, sort of really beautiful, but it looks a bit shit in photos, I think.
Yeah, it's more of a video type thing.
I can't believe I just swore.
You've ruined it. You've ruined it. Oh, you got to.
I was trying my hardest not to have one of those explicit lyrics things come up on the podcast. So sorry. Can't help
Your mum's going to be on the phone. I can't believe you swore.
Oh no, she's used to that.
Hopefully some listeners have been inspired to take up some of their hobbies and incorporate them with their photography.
Yeah.
Keep some sort of passion projects going.
Yeah, I mean, if you can just find some time to dedicate to a little project, however small it is, and it doesn't have to be, a grand thing. I kind of wish I did have something that I could do on a daily basis here in the UK. I think that's maybe my next challenge from here, is to come up with a new project that I can do more regularly. It's important. It's good to stay inspired.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I'll look forward to seeing whatever you come up with. Do you want to plug your Instagram handles and the rest of your social media plugs?
Thank you. Yes, please. Please follow me on Instagram. I don't have many followers. I'm Lexi Laine photo on Instagram. It's Lexi with an I, and Laine also has an I in it as well. And I am doing a talk in the not so distant future for Photography Farm at Farmers Market. And I'll be talking a little bit about how to stay inspired and talking about personal projects generally.
Very cool.
So yeah, I think that the dates for those will be announced soon, but it's in October at Photography Farmers Market.
Cool.
Yeah, I would highly recommend people go along to that. They're good events.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Thank you. And yeah, if anybody wants to watch the little film that I made, then it is on Wex Photo Videos YouTube channel at the moment, or you can find a link from my Facebook page onto that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And why not give Ollie a wee...
Ollie Putnam, yes.
Why not give him a follow as well, listeners? Because it's good to support people.
Yes, do. Yeah, follow him on Instagram. He does amazing stuff. He's very passionate about sharks generally, and he's done some incredible films with. I saw one recently that he did with whale shark. Was it one whale shark? Yeah, and it was just the most close up footage that I've ever seen. The most incredible looking encounter that, as a viewer, makes you feel like you were there with that whale shark, and so incredibly beautiful and inspiring to watch. Yeah, he's a good person.
Do you remember earlier in the podcast when I said about my own fears in the water, and I mentioned a shark in the water is something I'm scared of? I'm sorry, Ollie. I will not be watching your shark video. I am so sorry.
I'm going to go and check it out anyway.
Whale sharks aren't scary. They're just like great big teddy bears.
Sharks are scary.
But yeah, thanks for giving us some time.
Yes, thank you very much.
Oh, pleasure.
And people can find us at cinematefilms.co.uk and on Instagram, Facebook at cinematefilms.
That's right. And if you want to follow our personal account, sorry, Greg, I interrupted you. I am Cine Simon.
That's Cine_Simon.
Sorry, yes.
And I'm Cine_Greg.
Easy to remember because we're both the same.
You want to see some of our personal behind the scenes, all my craft beer, coffee.
That's right. And I don't know what I post. Sometimes random, sometimes fitness, sometimes scooters, sometimes kill. I don't know. I'm going to try and do some more behind the scenes of Cinemate that isn't tonally appropriate for the brand, but maybe I know. I'm just too loose. I'm too loose, too crazy, too off the hook. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, hit that subscribe button. Just so you know when the next episode goes online, please leave a review. That is a massive help and helps us grow the podcast. And if you don't want to do that, totally cool. Just tell a friend. Greg, how can people leave a review?
They can go to iTunes and leave a review there. It's Perspective Podcast. Obviously, you're listening to it. The link is in the show notes. If you're listening on Spotify, there isn't any form of show notes, which I've said before, and it's just weird.
It is weird.
You need to get on it, which I'm sure they will soon. But if you're listening to Spotify, jump over to cinematefilms.co.uk/podcast and you'll get a link there to take you to the iTunes.
And I just want to do an announcement, apology. The mix for last week's episode with Craig Sanders was not right when it first got put online. It has since been replaced. The mix is better now, but for some reason, my laptop just exported with all the wrong settings, and I apologize for that. I was way too loud. That was not a vanity thing. That was a mistake thing.
Until next time.
Enjoy your life.